Hello, BookTube. We've got a little bit of mail for you today on an absolutely gorgeous Monday. Just a beautiful way to start the week. Warm but not hot, sunny but not baking. Just lovely, without the slightest hint of moisture or precipitation in the short-term or long-term forecast. That is lovely for walking around on the beautiful day. That's not lovely in the long term. If Boston doesn't get any more rain until September, that's going to be very bad for Boston. But today, absolutely beautiful. The type of day where if you're out in the sun walking around, and the Bean and I have done that a couple of times, because if she wants to go outside, I say yes. That's all there is to it. It's not, oh, I'm not ready, or no, now's not the time, or we'll go in half an hour, or something like that. I deny her the ability to come and go if she pleases. So if she says, I want to go, we go. She doesn't often say that. She doesn't often say that. It's usually good enough for her just to watch the world from her window, and even in the last year, even that, she's not always up for doing that. She maybe just wants to curl up and sleep. But it's the kind of day where if you do that, and you go out walking around up on the hill or in the neighborhoods or in the side streets, you will start to get warm. Moving around like that, you'll start to get warm. You won't get hot. Even she won't get hot, and she's incredibly sensitive to overheating. And the minute you get back inside the house with the windows open, but no ceiling fan going, no electric fan going, certainly no AC unit going, the minute you're just back inside and stationary, you start to cool off. That is just perfect. Just perfect weather. And I have a little bit of mail here. There were no periodicals in this batch. They could be coming. I think I'm a little too early in the day for normal periodicals, although tucked down in the bowels of the mailbox was a Checky Poo. Always very nice. That's always very nice. But we've got a couple of packages. That'll keep the mail ball rolling here. We've got one in stately black here. Let's see what this is. Thought I would do a couple of videos today at least that didn't have to do with any BookTube event, just in case some of you just aren't doing BookTube events of any kind. What have we got here? Oh my. Okay. You must be a long way off. Yeah, October. All right, this is an advanced copy of the new novel by Alan Moore. This is The Great When, a long London novel. Let's see here. Okay. All right. Let's just skip the first paragraph here and move straight to the second. The first paragraph is written solely to irritate me, so let's move to the second one. The first installment in Alan Moore's new Long London series, The Great When, introduces a unique and fascinating fantasy world with memorable characters, excellent prose, and an exhilarating plot. Like his 2022 story collection Illuminations, which Juno Diaz called remarkable in the New York Times Book Review, really going out on a limb there, it cements Moore's status among the most popular speculative fiction novelists working today. Okay. All right. He wrote The Watchmen. Let's see here. Dennis Knuckleyard. Oh, my God. Okay. All right. Deep breath. Dennis Knuckleyard is a hapless 18-year-old who lives and works in a secondhand bookstore. One day, his boss and landlady, Coffin Ada, Coffin space Ada, that is this other character's name, sends him to retrieve some rare books, one of which, Dennis discovers, should not exist. A London Walk by the Reverend Thomas Hampole is a fictitious book that appears in a real novel by another author, yet A London Walk is physically there in his hands nonetheless. Coffin Ada tells Dennis the book comes from the other London, the Great When, a version of the city that is beyond time. In the Great When, epochs blend and realities and unrealities blur, while concepts such as crime and poetry are incarnated as wondrous and terrible beings. Okay, all right, I'm sold. But Coffin Ada tells Dennis, if he does not return the book to this other London, he will be killed. So begins Dennis's adventure in Long London, delving deep into the city's occult underbelly and tarrying with an eccentric cast of sorcerers, gangsters, and murderers, Dennis finds himself at the center of an explosive series of events that may endanger both Londons. Mystical, hilarious, and magnificently imagined, this book is an unforgettable introduction to the consciousness-altering world of Long London. Okay, all right. Well, this author wrote a gigantic work of fantasy called Jerusalem that I loved. Eventually, I loved it. I didn't love it at first. I came to love it. So, what do we learn about Alan Moore here? Alan Moore is widely regarded as the best and most influential writer in the history of comics. Is he? Is he widely regarded as the most influential writer in the history of comics? Is he? Okay. More than Stan Lee. Okay, all right. His seminal works include From Hell, The League of Extraordinary Gentlemen. He's also the author of the best-selling Jerusalem and story collection Illuminations. He was born in Northampton, England, and has lived there ever since. Okay. Well, that's really weird. As an author bio, that is really, really weird. It's not going to say the same thing on the book? Yeah, it does. It says the exact same thing on the book, only it gives a creepy picture. That author biography is really weird. That has to be the product of Alan Moore's direct intervention. That can't be a publicist risking everything by risking irritating and notoriously temperamental author. Because that is wrong in a lot of ways. He is not widely regarded as the most influential writer in the history of comics, first of all. And From Hell and League of Extraordinary Gentlemen are certainly works of his, yes, but the seminal work of his is not mentioned in this author biography. The Watchmen is not mentioned in this author biography. And also it refers to Jerusalem as best-selling, and it was not. Not the hardcover, and not even the paperback. In America, the paperback had a gorgeous paperback reprint. And even that, I'm not even saying that it sold, let alone that it best sold. So that is really odd. Why would you intend... If you're Alan Moore, it can't be a publicist. You don't make a decision like this that sticks out like a sore thumb. Literally everyone who knows this author is going to read that author biography and notice the same thing I did, which is that The Watchmen is not mentioned. A publicist is not going to leave that off and risk a furious phone call from Alan Moore. So Alan Moore had to have left it off. Why would he do that? Is he in a period now where he's trying to disown The Watchmen? I don't know. Maybe he's not happy with it. Maybe he doesn't want his name associated with it anymore. Who knows? It doesn't matter anyway. This doesn't come out until October. And you know, BookTube, this... I will certainly read this, and I will certainly write about it, but I have a feeling that one of you could write about this a lot better than I could. You have all the time in the world. If you live in the lower 48 states and you would like to try reading this, you would like to try reading this and writing a review for Open Letters Review, the online literary journal where I'm one of the editors, feel free to get in touch with me. You just need to fulfill a few ground rules. You need to fulfill a few conditions to give this a try. If I'm going to mail this to you, you have to live in the lower 48 states of the United States. I'm not going to mail it outside the lower 48 of the United States. I'm not going to mail it across the border to Mexico or Canada. I'm not going to mail it to Hawaii or Alaska. I'm not going to mail it overseas because it's not going to reach you. Overseas mail doesn't reach anybody. And it's incredibly expensive. So I'm paying money literally for nothing. So that's condition number one. You need to live in the lower 48 states. Condition number two, you need to want the book. You can't be Mr. Casual. Yeah, I might pick it up. I might take a look. I might glance at it. One person years ago actually wrote to me, I might glance at it. Yeah, thanks. That's great. I'm so impressed. Yeah, you might glance at it. You have to want the book. Condition number three, if you'd be getting it, I'd be sending you an explicit condition that you write a review for Open Letters Review, which means you're writing for Open Letters Review. Open Letters Review is a mainstream, normal, general public review venue. So the reviews are around 800 words. They don't include any kind of gonzo journalism. They don't include any kind of autobiography. They include quotes from the book. So if I send you the book, you should be already agreeing to the house conditions of Open Letters Review. You shouldn't get the book, ruminate on it until August or September or whatever, and then send me 2,200 pages that start with 4 paragraphs about your upbringing. I'm not going to take that. I'm not going to run it. It's a waste of your time and mine, so you should be willing to abide by Open Letters house rules to do this. If you fit the bill, I would love to mail this to you and see what you make of it. And run it if the review is good. But anyway, there we go. This comes out in the autumn. This is the Great When. I confess, I'll be curious to read it. Definitely. But I'd rather somebody else review it. I'm sure for want of a better term, I'm sure there's an Alan Moore fanboy out there who would like to review this a lot more than I would. I'm happy to facilitate that. But anyway, let's see what the next book is. Okay, the next one's a finished copy of something. What have we got here? Okay. This is a hardcover, a finished copy. This comes out in late July. Okay. I'm a little bit standoffish here because I'm getting virtually radiation vibes from this book that I am not welcome. that it hates me by name. That I'm a named character and it hates me by name in this book. We'll see. I might not be right about that. This is a novel called Body Friend by Catherine Brabon from the folks at Bloomsbury. This comes out on July 16th. Let's see here. This is the author's U.S. debut. So what else has the author done? The Memory Artist and Shut-Ins, which I guess are only available in the UK. This is her U.S. debut. Let's see here. In the wake of a major operation, a 28-year-old woman with chronic illness has 12 weeks to heal, or rather, to acclimate to her new body and prepare herself to leave the routines, comforts, and interiority of her convalescence. In the hydrotherapy pool, she meets Frida, not you, baby, not you, a young woman who looks strikingly similar to her and is also in a state of recovery. But Frida sees her chronic illness as something to overcome and her body as something to control. She adores the pool and pushes the narrator and herself toward an active life, relentlessly pursuing the prevailing narrative of illness followed by recovery. Okay, let's move on. But the narrator also happens upon Sylvia, another young, convalescing woman resting on a bench in a nearby park, which the narrator frequents on the days she is too ill to swim. Sylvia understands her body and the narrator's in a different way, gently encouraging her to rest, to perceive illness as something happening to her, but which does not define her. Throughout the narrator's recovery, these women shadow, overlap, mirror, and complicate one another, and what begins as two seemingly undemanding friendships is challenged by what each woman asks of the narrator, of themselves, and of their bodies. Okay, that didn't specifically mention me, and I consider that a victory. I wish that my mind didn't immediately think that the root cause of the chronic illness of all three of these women is men. And also, I don't get that bit about the prevailing narrative of illness followed by recovery. I guess 28 years old, so you spent your entire life in the 21st century. You would be accustomed to just in young people, the 21st century has inculcated an absolutely atmospheric, all-encompassing self-pity. You are always taking mental health days. You are always nurturing yourself. Always. You are always doing that. You're always sick. Now, on one level, maybe trivially, maybe not, that is true. Because if you are a person who was born in the 21st century, or effectively born in the 21st century, you've been taking medication that you don't need since you were a toddler. You've been filling your body with unregulated and unknown medications. I call them medications just because that's the word we use for them. Since you were a small child. Your behavior was modulated and controlled with these substances long before you had any capacity to volunteer for them. And that has just continued. So, in one sense, maybe some of that unbelievable amount of self-pity is justified. I have never seen a generation that pities itself more than Gen Z. It's just solid block of self-pity. So the prevailing narrative of illness followed by recovery, that is not the prevailing narrative. That is the narrative. Maybe, though, that has been abandoned by young people in the 21st century. Maybe it's just, no, I'm collecting illnesses like I collect antique buttons. And I'm not getting rid of them. My illness does define me. I'm not getting rid of it. I have chronic illness X, Y, and Z. Every single person under the age of 30 that I have met who has said they have a chronic illness was in fact wrong about that. They were in fact wrong about that. There was nothing wrong with it. That wasn't self-induced. I mean, if you vape all day long every day, you do have a health problem, but it's not a chronic illness. You did it yourself. But anyway, we'll see what this is like. In fact, I'll read the first paragraph, but first I want to tread out onto the thin branch and read the author's bio. The author is an award-winning author of The Memory Artist and The Shut-Ins. Her work has appeared in Vogue, Australian Book Review, the Australian Financial Review, the Saturday Paper, and she is a regular contributor to Melbourne's Lindsay magazine. Oh, she's Australian. The Australian Book Review, I tried to make overtures to them, see if I could review a book for them. I never heard back from them. Never heard anything. I thought Australia was a desert for the arts. I thought there was no book culture. Her writing has been supported by the Art Omni New York and the UNESCO Cities of Literature International Residency. She lives and works in Melbourne, Australia, and this is her debut for the US. Okay, fantastic. So, an Australian writer. I wonder if the book takes place in Australia. Let's read the beginning, shall we? I don't know how I feel about this thing. I don't have to figure it out until July. Let's see what the beginning of this is like. Oh, it's told in little blocks. Okay, it's not a straightforward narrative. It's told in little block paragraphs here. So this is the first one. Late in the summer 5 years ago, when I was recovering from a surgical procedure, I met two women within a few weeks of each other, and I saw both of them regularly, always separately, for some months afterwards. Summer did not give way easily that year, and even so, we must force our bodies down to sleep in the heat. And even if experience does not give itself up easily to representation, I will lay it down anyway. Frame the raw and exigent weeks, the untrustworthy months after the hospital, render it and them, Frida and Sylvia, as closely as possible to reality, or whatever is the feeling of life and mind lived inside the body. It was the first time I had lived in a room with a balcony, and it was new, all of it. The act of opening the door, walking through, and still you did not leave the room. You stood instead in the air, and it was new, the way of seeing the street when it could not easily see you back. A balcony is part of your room and outside of it. It allows an external view without losing sight of the interior. It was a point of view in which I felt safe. The balcony was covered, so I could stand in the rain and my skin did not feel it. Okay. All right, that's really good. Okay, fantastic. All right, so we had two works of fiction for the mail today. Alan Moore, his new book, The Great When, Alternate London. See, I immediately thought of Darker Shade of Magic. We'll see. We'll see if Alan Moore has read A Darker Shade of Magic. I will know in 2 seconds if he has. And Body Friend. Very interesting stuff. Very intrigued about this. It did not, the vibes, the internal warning sense, the spidey sense did not prove correct. Instead, I'm intrigued by this. But nevertheless, both of these things seem a little ersatz to me. I would like to mail this off to an Alan Moore superfan. Of course, I would like Hannah at Hannah's Books to review this. but I don't. I will count on reviewing both myself, and we'll just see. I'll make the proper entries. We'll see how it goes. But that's the mail. And in the course of this mail, largely because I said her name, the name of one of the characters, was also the name of my tiny little bean. We're going to be able to make her out there. She's over on her chair. Can you make her out? There she is. She has figured out the great bearing straight there. She's figured out that she can hop from the couch to the bed, so she now has broadened her territory and will often be over there when it's warm, and she doesn't want to be pressed against me. But she heard her name, and now she wants to go walkies, so we're going to do that. So we're going to go out in the beautiful weather again. But I'm going to wrap this up. I'll be back. Thank you, BookTube.